So there's actually 5 different reasons that I've seen that your ratings and reviews can do that. To do what, you ask? Let's dive in.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
Hey, what's up, podcaster? Thank you for coming back to the show. I love that you're a listener. I'm going to dive in today and talk about 5 reasons that your ratings and reviews can do this thing. And this stems from an awesome client of ours, somebody that you should probably check out his podcast because he does an amazing job. Like, this guy is really, really good. So it's called The Happy Engineer. We'll go ahead and link to The Happy Engineer, but check out his podcast. Zach he's remarkable. Man, this guy is an engineer and he's great at sales. Now, no offense to any engineers listening. I'm not saying that it's impossible for you to be good at sales. I'm just saying it is not probable. That's the truth of it. A lot of times people are either technicians or marketers. They're either salespeople or they're technical people. They are either an engineering brain that dissects and figures out stuff, but they are less good at sales. It's a normal thing. We're either this or that, typically speaking. Zach is an anomaly. A what? Anomaly, as you've probably seen in Dora, or is it not Dora the Explorer? What is that? Finding Nemo. She's an anemone. Okay, so anyway, let's just get to the point, right? There's 5 reasons that your ratings and reviews can do what? Do what? What are you talking about? Here's the few things. He reached out because we are actually working on his behalf to grow his podcast. And it seems to be working. It seems to be working well. And each and every report, it seems like he's getting ranked higher and higher. He's getting more and more listeners. And he's also getting more ratings reviews. But as an engineer, he is really good at the things like patterns, like what is happening. There's something going on here. And so I'm not going to read his email because it's not in front of me right now, but I'm going to cover my response to the email. And his question, though, in general was, hey, Adam, I noticed that sometimes it'll look like it goes several days without any reviews that show up on my podcast. But then in one day, I might get 3 or 5 or 10 reviews all at once, 10 reviews at the same time. That seems suspicious. It seems weird. Do you know what might be going on? And if you're listening, you've probably noticed a similar thing. You probably noticed that with your podcast, you probably aren't getting quite as many as him. He might even get 10 in a day every now and again, right? You might not be getting 10 a day. That's a lot. That's a shit ton, to be honest. So now I said shit. That means this podcast has to be marked as explicit. So there we go. The point is that is a shit ton of reviews to happen in one day. And it became suspicious for an engineer, especially because it's why wouldn't there be 5 in one day and 5 in a different day, or 4 in one day and 6 in a day, or 3 and then 3 and then 4? Why would it be 10 all at once? Do you know what could be going on? Because it seems like the written review could be a fake written review. It could just be your team has said, oh, okay, let's go and work for Zach and write some fake reviews. We'll get 10 out of the way and then we'll take a break and we'll go to somebody else's podcast, right? So that's what his concern was. And here's the 5 reasons that it will actually happen to not just Zach's podcast, but to other podcasts. It's just Zach's going to notice it first, A, because he's an engineer and he's brilliant and he's going to notice this. But B, it's going to happen because of these 5 reasons. So let's dive into them so you can understand what might be going on with your podcast as well. The number one most likely reason that you might have multiple happen in one day and then a few days might go by with none. And then later on, you get a few happening in one day is because, and here's the number one most likely reason, Apple employees actually batch their work when they verify different written ratings and reviews. So it is important to Apple Podcast to, what's the word for it, to verify that these ratings and reviews are coming in from authentic listeners. And so what they'll do is people will publish their review. Like you might have had your mom give you a rating review, but you didn't see it until like 4 days later. And on the day that you saw it, you saw another buddies who came up on the same day. You see all of a sudden 2. And you're like, why did it take them 5 days to get my mom's review up? And why did it happen that it was the same day as my friend who just did it today or yesterday, for example? Well, it's because Apple Podcast employees, the employees at Apple, they will actually have to batch the work. So they like to verify all of them. And so sometimes when you get a lot, they will wait a few days and they won't check it at all. And then they'll see that you've been getting some in. Now, those don't automatically publish. Unfortunately, they don't just show up right away. Sometimes they take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days. And that is because the employee sees that they're in the queue, and then they'll go through, they'll read them, they'll make sure that you've actually listened to the podcast, either by how you've written it, how it's been written, either if the person wrote something like, I met her in person and she's great, you should listen to her podcast. They're going to throw that one away. They're going to say, no, that doesn't seem like a verified listener. They're not writing anything about the podcast, so we're getting rid of that one. Or B, they'll say, hey, this came from a bot. Like this written rating doesn't even say anything. It's like, oh, great podcast. And it comes from a random account, and that account never downloaded. So that Apple employee is also instructed, don't let that one pass. Don't let that one go in because they're not a verified listener. So Apple employees are really important. And they are kind of like a gateway to these ratings and reviews. And they want to make sure that it's an authentic rating and review. So they will batch it. So that's the number one most likely thing. When you've got more than one that's pending, they're going to go and read them one at a time, verify that they all work. And if they publish them, they might publish 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 all in the same day. That's the most likely. There's 5 total reasons. The second most likely is another contribution that could be happening is, well, my team does a DM process. That means direct message. So when we are working for you, when we're helping your podcast, we're actually private messaging people on your behalf. We're private messaging who we believe is your perfect avatar. And we get to that by you doing an avatar questionnaire, etc. We're batching in the beginning. Like when I say we batch, that means that one of my employees is going to be working either full-time or half-time for you. If you're on our top package, you get a full-time person doing this. If you're on our middle package, you get a half-time. If you're on our lowest package, you don't get anybody doing the DMs. This is one of the most effective ways, but it costs a shit ton of money for us to put that person full-time working for you. And when they start with you, they'll start by sending out introductory emails, and they will do a few introductory emails each and every day, but they generally start by sending out, let's call it 100 different people, the first message in the first day. And then the next day they're replying to those people. And then the next day they're replying to the replies. And then the next day replying to the replies. And about a month goes by. I'll call it 3 weeks goes by, 3.5 weeks. And it's now time for us to start saying to the people, hey, what podcast, I can't talk today. What podcast do you recommend? And so now we start getting feedback. And then we go and listen to those podcasts after like 3.5 weeks of connecting with your perfect avatar. And then we'll listen to all these, and then we'll go and reply to all of those people. And we'll say, thank you for sharing this thing. I liked this, this, and this about it. This stood out to me. That was valuable. And we'll mention that when they are offering different podcasts to us or books. We'll read the book, whatever information that they give us. We'll take the course, we'll buy the course, we'll go through it, and then we'll tell them what we liked about it, what we thought about it, what was valuable. And then once that's all done, then we kind of batch, not kind of, we literally do batch the time that we're following up after everybody sent this and we've given our feedback. Then we'll say, hey, have you ever heard of XYZ podcast? Right. And so that happens all in one day. We're asking, let's call it 30 people, all in the exact same day. Have you heard of XYZ podcast? We're not copying and pasting and sending it. We would get shut down. So we actually send that same email, private message. It's, have you heard of this podcast? But it's said in 6 different ways. One of the times we might say, have you ever heard of the Happy Engineer podcast? ? And then the second person, we might say, I was wondering if you've heard of Zach White and his podcast called The Happy Engineer ? And then the third one, we might say, yo, are you a follower of Zach White? He's the host of the Happy Engineer podcast. And then we might say, hey, random question. I was wondering if you've ever heard of the Happy Engineer podcast by Zach White. And so now we've said it. It's always the same message after the 3.5 weeks. And then another 2 weeks goes by. And now we're in the 6th week. We're about approaching that 6th week. And we are sending probably to 30 or 40 people. Have you heard of this podcast? But with different weights, right? And on that day, we will wait and people will start following up and they'll say, never heard of it. And then our reply a couple days later is, he's got this great episode about XYZ, about how to be a happy engineer, we'll pretend. So maybe Zach wants to get in front of engineers who work a 9 to 5, who are ready to move up the corporate ladder or start their own business. And so we're reaching out to those engineers and then we're saying, hey, there's this awesome episode by Zach that I'd love to share with you. I think it'll help you get your promotion. What do you think if I send it over? Something like that. And then they will reply back and they'll say something like, would love to hear it. Please send it over. And then we'll get to them and say, here's the episode that you requested. Let me know what you think about it. ? Let me know what you think about it. That's such an important effing question. It's a big reason why we ended up getting these ratings and reviews. So after they reply back and say, oh, I loved that episode. It taught me X, Y, and Z. Well, hey, by the way, because of reciprocity, we've already given them that type of feedback. And so they're expecting that they should be giving us that similar type of actual feedback about the thing that they're listening to. And because a lot of them are giving this to us in the same couple of days, let's say we reach out to about 30 or 40, and we'll get 10 to 12 of them who actually say, I loved it. Here's my feedback. And then what we say back to them practically in the same day or maybe 2 or 3 days total, but it's always in the same span, right? We'll say something like, wow, I love what you said about that. I bet Zach would be thrilled if all you did is just copied and pasted what you just told me and leave him a rating and a review. I mean, a written review on his show since you liked it so much, right? And then we'll probably get like 5, 10, 15 people all doing that all in a very short amount of time. And generally speaking, Apple's going to batch those and put them all in at once. But we're batching how we even ask for the ratings and reviews from those people who have actually listened. So that's a second contribution. The third contribution is less impact, but still notable, is that the day that your episode gets published, like you're going to publish your episodes, let's just pretend like you publish every Friday. Let's just pretend that. All right. Well, you get a significant of your people that already follow you that happen to get pinged on Friday. And so because that's the day that your episodes go live, that's the day that people get notified on their podcast app where it says that there's a new episode available with this podcast, The Happy Engineer, for example. And then it says, check out the podcast. And so you get a significant amount more listeners in the first 2 days of your episodes dropping. Most of the people that listen in the first 2 days. Okay. And what ends up happening is that they're going to listen. And because they just listened today, if they're going to leave an authentic rating and written review, if they're going to leave it, and fewer people do, but they're probably going to leave it within that 2-day span, within the day that it's launched. I mean, the day that the episodes go published, or the very next day. There's much higher percentage that they listen on the first day or the second day than they will on the next 5 days. And so if they're going to leave a rating or a written review, then they're probably going to do it around the time that it's published. That was number 3. Number 4 is another piece that can have some impact. The spikes is typically a lot of people listen to podcasts on Mondays and Thursdays. So those have a high statistical download amount versus some of the other dates. Now, first and foremost, they're probably going to listen within the first couple of days. But if they don't, then they're probably going to listen to you on Mondays or Thursdays. This is the most likely. And that would be followed by Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So the most likely is Mondays and Thursdays. Second most likely is Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So for example, if they're not listening on the exact day, maybe you'll have people organically trying to listen on a Monday, and you'll have a high percentage of people just trying to check it out on a Monday. These are backdated. They've been up for a while and they're just now getting to it. That might spike them to give ratings and reviews on Mondays, Thursdays, or Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And if their ratings and reviews are doing it like this, and or like number 3, when they're being published on a certain day, let's say you publish on Mondays or Thursdays or Fridays or any other day, these things can add to each other, whereas number 1 is going to come back to an effect where it's still getting backed up for the people at Apple. And so they might see 2 or 3 of those ratings or written reviews coming in, and then they need to verify it. These are the likely things. The 5th one that could impact it is, for example, with our clients, with Zach in particular, well, all of our marketing and paid advertising clients, the clients that we do this type of work for, he might be seeing spikes because we take screenshots of the results on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and only Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So every single Monday, he has 3 days of results that we will have a screenshot of. On Tuesday, we won't show any results. On Wednesday, we'll show 2 days worth of results, 48 hours of results. On Thursdays, we won't show any results. On Fridays, we'll show 2 days worth of results. On Saturdays, we won't show any. On Sundays, we won't show any. And then back on a Monday again, we're going to show 3 full days worth of results. So based on the fact that we're only taking screenshots of where he is on a Monday and a Wednesday and a Friday, but never on any of those other dates, we're not going to see the smaller increments on those other dates. We're not going to see anything that happens on other 4 days per week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if Zach, for example, is looking at our screenshots and not just his own results by himself, if all he's looking at is just the screenshots of when we're taking our time to do this, it takes so much freaking time for those people on my team to go in to every single client every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It is close to a full-time job for that person to take the screenshots and categorize the screenshots. It gets insane. It's a lot of freaking work. Maybe one day we'll do it less. Maybe we'll do it on Mondays and Thursdays or just Mondays or whatever, because it takes so much money, so much labor to be able to track it. But it helps us to be able to track it 3 days a week at least. I wish we had the resources to track it every day, 7 days a week. Wouldn't that be awesome? But we're only taking screenshots of where is this person. It's a snapshot on a Monday and then a Wednesday and then a Friday, 3 out of 7 days of the week. So like I said, some days like Monday, it'll have 3 days of results. And then on Wednesdays, it'll have a couple days. Fridays, it'll have a couple days of results. So if by any chance Zach is only looking at the screenshots that we send our clients, then that'll be another factor that could show up. And the point of all of this is it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a client or not a client. It is very normal to see these batched. It's very normal to see 2 or 3 or 4 at a time. And then you might go a week or 2 without seeing them. And then you might see 2 or 3 or 4. Or if you're a client at the highest level with us and you're getting a significant amount more people actually giving you that social proofing of ratings and written reviews, then in that case, you might be seeing like 6 or 9 or 10 at our highest level. You might see it happen where it's all of a sudden 10 on one day, but you don't see it again for another couple of days. And I'll share those factors with you again. Number 1, Apple employees do batch because they verify each and every one. Number 2 is if you're one of our clients, it's the DM process. Or if you're phone calling your friends and family, it's your phone call process. You might be batching those. And so other people might be batching. And it just shows up that they all do it in the span of 2 or 3 days. And Apple takes those 2 or 3 days all together at once. Third is the day that your episode gets published could have an effect. Number 4, the day that statistically people mostly listen to podcasts in general could also have a small effect. Number 5, especially if you're one of our clients, we're only taking screenshots Monday, Wednesday, Friday, not on the other 4 days per week. And so whatever happens on those other 4 days, like Sunday and Monday, is going to come out like on the rest of Friday, all of Saturday, all of Sunday, and the beginning of Monday. That'll only show up on Monday. And it just depends on how you're looking at this and where you're finding your stats. But it is absolutely perfectly normal for people to get a couple at a time. It's going to get real suspicious, real bad. It's probably not okay if, for example, you got 12 in a day and then you waited like a month or 2 with none. In Zach's case, it's not like that. He's getting like 3, 6, or even up to 10 that show up. And then a few days later, he'll have 3, 6, or even up to 10. And then a few days later, it's 3, 6, or even up to 10. Now, it's not always 3 or 6 or 10, but this is in general. It's usually for him, because he's getting so many, it's usually more than 1 or 2. And it's usually not more than 10 at a time. But he's getting a significant amount more. I think the guy has 100 and I'm going to look it up because I don't like to embellish. I don't like to be inaccurate. I don't like, especially if you could look it up and verify it. So I'm going to go to the Happy Engineer. Thank you for listening to my song. I just made that up, which might be surprising to most of you. That was totally on the spot. I know it was great. Maybe not on key, but just a fantastic tune. I literally made that up on the fly. So, Zach, as of the time I'm recording, he doesn't have a ton, but he is actually easily within the top, easily twice as high as the top 1% of the world. He's got 135 ratings as I'm recording this, 135. The most recent one was 19 days ago. So yeah, it's like earlier I said a few days and then it'll get 3. Sometimes it'll go 2 or 3 weeks without them. And that is perfectly fine. That is perfectly normal. He got the last one 19 days ago. And it was from somebody who was featured on his podcast, Raphael. And then the one before that, a written review, was about a month ago. It looks like he gets more ratings than reviews. And that's actually probably normal for you as well. That's normal for me too. I have more people that simply click on the 5-star or 4-star, or however many they want to give me, that click on that, then take the time, even though it might only take a minute or 2, to write out a thoughtful review. So he certainly isn't getting a stupid amount of those, but he got like 3 on December 23rd. That was like 6 months ago. But he got like 3 on that one day that showed up, 1 the day before, a couple a few weeks later. So it's not crazy, and it's not something that should actually be suspicious. It's not robot things or anything like that. And it probably is not for you either. Just remember that. It's good to understand how this works and why it could go up and down and kind of like what to look for. And your call to action today, well, it could be, hey, work with us. Let us market your podcast. Let us grow your show. Zach's doing really well because of it. Or the other call to action would be, why don't you actually call some people and ask for authentic written ratings and reviews using this formula, this script that I'm about to give you in 3 and 2 and 1. Why don't you call people and say, hey, man, I launched my podcast a little while ago and I was listening to somebody's show and they said that the ratings and reviews, that social proofing could be really valuable to me. And so I wanted to reach out to a couple people that I trust. Boom. Let that sink in. I wanted to reach out to a couple people I trust. You're one of them. And I wanted to find out if I could count on you to listen to an episode or two of the show and just leave an honest review of whatever you think of the podcast. Can I count on you? Boom. Write that down. Figure it out in your own words. How are you going to say the same thing? And maybe start either calling a lot of people and batch it, kind of like we do with our DMs. Or why don't you pick out a couple of people each week that you call and say, hey, my friend, I was calling selfishly because I needed a couple people that I trust to leave an honest written review of the podcast, not about me, but about the actual show. Do you think I could count on you to listen to just an episode or two of the show and leave an authentic written review? Question mark. Boom. That will work. So you need to do one of two things, or you'll be in trouble. A, hire our company. Let us help you with this. B, do it on your own and start calling people and getting some of that social proofing using the script that I just laid out. Go ahead and push. There's like a little rewind button. You can go rewind, and get to the beginning of it. Listen to it a couple times, write it down, and make sure that you have it because it will help you. And sometimes you'll get a few at a time, and then there might be a small lull, and then you'll get a few at a time. It won't be a bad thing. Don't stress about it. Apple employees just need to verify that these people actually listened and not just fakely wrote a random thing that's not even about your show. And I'll leave you with that. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye for now. Oh, hey, because 3 of my clients came to me recently looking to find a way to have their podcast make them money instead of cost them money, we put together a resource for some of our clients, and I want to give it to you as well. It's something that did actually seem to help because one of them is now making $2,600 a month. Another one's $4,500 a month. And the third is making between $5,000 and $10,000 each month. And so it's been a resource that's been incredibly valuable to them. It's our sponsor sheet template. It's a template of a sponsor sheet, and it gives you something that you can hand to potential sponsors and hopefully also be making $2,600, $4,500, or between $5,000 and $10,000 regularly each month with your podcast. So this has been a contributing factor to helping all 3 of those clients turn their podcast into an additional income stream for them. And the way that you can find it is just going to our website, growyourshow.com, but put in /templates, growyourshow.com/templates. And then you can actually download that template and others that could be valuable to your podcasting experience. I'll see you on the next episode.